Going undercover as a warehouse worker at 56 years old sounds easy until you actually do it. I'm Ethan Ward, 56, CEO and co-founder of Quinline Supply, one of the largest logistics chains in the country. We've got over 18,000 employees across the U.S. from California to New York, operating quietly behind the scenes of major retail giants. We're the lungs of the supply chain. No one thinks about us until we stop breathing. 2 months ago, I started receiving a series of anonymous emails flagged through our internal ethics line. All complaints were aimed at the Boston South branch. The accusations were serious. The branch manager, a man named Kyle Ferguson, was allegedly abusing his power, manipulating schedules, pushing older workers out, and creating a toxic environment for anyone over 40. Linda, our VP of HR and someone I've trusted for over a decade, confirmed the numbers didn't lie. Turnover at that branch was 3 times higher than average, but no one would go on the record. And Kyle. His reports painted a perfect picture. I thought about it for a week, and then one afternoon, sitting in my leather chair on the 23rd floor of our New York headquarters, I took off my tie, looked Linda in the eye, and said, "I'm going in." Of course, I wasn't dumb enough to use my real name. With discreet help from Linda and our head of IT, I created a brand new employee profile, Robert Turner, 56, recently retired, and looking for part-time work to stay active. A burner email, a perfectly legal fake driver's license, a background check that raised no red flags. 4 days later, I stood outside the Boston South warehouse wearing a Navy Quinline uniform name tag reading Robert T. The door swung open, and out walked Kyle. He was maybe in his early 30s with overly groomed hair spotless, on cloud sneakers and the smirk of someone who'd read exactly one book on leadership and misinterpreted all of it. His eyes scanned me from my work boots to my graying temples. "Oh," he said with a chuckle, "did corporate send you over from the senior reintegration program?" I smiled. "I'm just here to work." "Sure," he shrugged, already turning. "You can start by unlocking the dock doors at 6 a.m. Training took 3 hours. A pink-haired college senior named Amy showed me around the loading zones. She was polite enough, but the younger employees, they gave me that look, like I was someone's dad who'd wandered into the wrong building. "This is Zone A," Amy explained. "You'll scan barcodes, load pallets, and bring them to outbound. I think you're supposed to call me sir," I joked. She laughed awkwardly. By noon, Kyle strolled into the loading bay with a venti Starbucks in hand, watching me haul a stacked pallet. He chuckled loud enough for everyone to hear. "Don't throw your back out, Pops. We don't cover retirement home injuries." I turned and met his eyes. They sparkled with just enough sarcasm to avoid HR complaints, but plenty to leave a sting. I nodded, appreciate the heads up. But in my head, I'd already started the clock. Every word, every smirk documented. And I wasn't alone. That night, I called Linda from a payphone 1 block over. "He's worse than the reports I said." "Do you have anything recorded yet?" I mic'd my uniform. Got him saying the retirement injuries line in front of 3 people. "Sending it now." There was a pause, then she replied, "We'll need more than that." "I know," I said. "And I'm going to get it, 1 step at a time." My lower back throbbed from lifting pallets, but mentally I was sharper than I'd been in years, because the real question wasn't whether Kyle was guilty. The real question was, did he suspect who I really was? And if he did, how far would he go to silence me? I didn't need anyone to respect me just because I was older, but I wanted to see how they'd treat me when they thought I was useless. In my first week, Kyle barely said my name. Most of the time, he'd whistle or gesture like he was calling a dog. "Hey, old man," he hollered from across the bay. "Mind pulling a few more pallets of bottled water?" Jimmy tweaked his wrist. Jimmy, the 25-year-old with arms like a linebacker, looked perfectly fine to me. Meanwhile, I was running on 4 hours of sleep and dragging carts out of Zone F cold storage, where the temperature rarely climbed above 40 degrees. Jamie, the quiet girl from day one, walked by. Our eyes met for a brief second. I caught something in her gaze. Regret, sympathy, I couldn't tell. But it was enough to make me think someone here sees what's happening. "I used to work deliveries," Kyle said during a morning meeting. "I know who's got potential and who's just dragging their saggy old bones around for a paycheck." I sat in the back pretending to take notes. My body recorder was on. The young crew laughed. A few hung their heads. Jamie looked down at her phone. Kyle turned to me smirking. Robert, you should consider moving to evening janitorial. Might be a better fit than trying to run a scan gun. Because I'm older, I asked, keeping my voice calm. He chuckled and tapped the table. No, no. Because you're careful. Older people tend to be more detail-oriented. You get it right. I nodded slowly, but inside I marked every word. 3 days later, Kyle called me into his makeshift office, a portable trailer out back. He closed the door, pulled out an energy drink from his mini fridge, and sprawled across his chair like he owned the place. Robert, he said, you're kind of an enigma. Am I sure? Guys your age don't show up for part-time warehouse jobs unless they're either broke or hiding something. You retired from some C-level role, maybe a bankrupt startup. He tilted his head. But here, you move boxes, I give orders. Don't forget that. I smiled. I don't need to impress anyone. Just give me a schedule and a cart that doesn't wobble. He sneered. Don't get snarky with me, Robert. You might be old enough to be my dad, but I'm not the kind of son who listens. I met his gaze calm, unflinching. For the first time, I let him see the eyes of a man who'd led 1,000 meetings like this and eaten men like him for breakfast. You're right, I said. I didn't come here for praise. I stood, nodded, and left. But before I closed the door, I looked up at the tiny corner security camera mounted over his desk, perfect line of sight. That night, I sat in my rented Ford Fusion in the back lot, laptop balanced on my knees. I played back the video stream the corporate security team had just sent me. It was clean, crystal clear audio. Kyle in all his smugness. I saved the clip to an encrypted hard drive. 3 to 5 more like this, I texted Linda. More if we can get witness statements. The next day, Kyle reassigned me to the heavy zone pallets full of appliances, washers, dryers, fridges. He made the switch in front of Jamie and Marcus, a stocky black man with years of wear on his boots. You said you're still strong, right? Kyle said with a grin. Then prove it. You want to keep your spot. Show me you're not dead weight. I didn't react, but Marcus grabbed my wrist once Kyle walked away. You shouldn't be here, he whispered. He'll chew you up. You don't know what he's capable of. I smiled. I know more than you think, I said, squeezing his hand gently. Later that week, I intentionally misrouted a pallet, sent it to Zone B instead of A. I wanted to see how Kyle would react. Sure enough, he called me up to the control office within the hour. You know what the problem is with old people, he said, slamming the door. It's not their bodies, it's their minds. Slow, foggy, and no one's brave enough to say it out loud. Except me. I stared at him, silent, not because I was afraid, but because the recorder in my jacket was running, the camera above his shoulder was rolling, and Kyle had just given me exactly what I needed, a statement no HR lawyer could ignore. I started noticing the change in my heartbeat every time I stepped into that warehouse. It wasn't fear, not of Kyle. He was too sloppy to be frightening. No, it was something else, a tension in the air. The kind I'd seen in dozens of internal investigations over the years. That slow, deliberate circling. He was preparing something. That Thursday morning, Kyle called me over the loudspeaker. His voice crackled with fake politeness. Robert Turner, please report to the control office. Heads turned. Someone whistled. I saw Jamie shake her head slightly. Marcus folded his arms. I made the slow walk up the stairs. Kyle greeted me at the door with a grin too wide to be real. Come in, Robert. Have a seat. Make yourself comfortable. There was a cardboard box on the desk. He slid it across to me. Why don't you open that? I lifted the lid. Inside was a barcode scanner, one issued only to floor supervisors. There were also printed shipping labels, a few rolls of packing tape, and a small zip bag containing something white and powdery. Kyle leaned forward, eyes gleaming. What do you suppose that is? I stared at him. He stared right back, smiling like a man who just laid the perfect trap. We found this in your locker, number 12. That's yours, right? My blood ran cold, not with fear, but with clarity. He'd made his move. Everything that followed happened fast. Kyle buzzed a security staffer. Robert Turner is being suspended pending investigation. Suspected theft of internal equipment. I didn't even blink. Based on what evidence? I asked calmly. Surveillance footage, he said smugly. You entered the restricted zone without authorization. It's all on tape. I knew the moment he was referring to a week ago when he had sent me there to move paperwork. If he only pulled the first half of that footage, it would look like I'd wandered in unapproved. As the security officer arrived, I raised my voice just enough for the others nearby to hear. I won't be signing anything. If you want to suspend me, send it in writing. And make sure you back up all surveillance footage, every second of it. Not just the part you cherry-picked. Kyle's smirk wavered. He hadn't expected me to push back. I left the warehouse, but I didn't leave the battlefield. That night I drove straight to our corporate HQ in Manhattan. Linda met me after hours, her face tight with tension. He set you up clean, she said. And he didn't act alone, I replied. Could be, she nodded. I checked the footage he submitted, only a partial clip. I've already filed a request for the full security log. I nodded back. And the audio recording's all safe. But it won't be enough to fire him yet. That's why I brought this. I handed her a file folder, printed screenshots of an anonymous email I'd received from Jamie. It outlined in detail how Kyle scheduled older employees for high-strain shifts, forcing them to quit voluntarily due to exhaustion. 4 days later, I walked back into HQ, not as Robert the warehouse grunt, but as Ethan Ward, CEO. Kyle didn't know. And now I held recordings of him mocking older employees, footage from his office with discriminatory remarks, email evidence of targeted scheduling, logs showing unauthorized access to employee lockers. All I needed was the right moment to bring it all down. That Monday, Kyle was invited to corporate for a quarterly performance review, a presentation he believed would help him fast-track into regional leadership. He showed up wearing a crisp white shirt, gray tie, shiny shoes. He strutted into the 22nd floor boardroom like a man arriving at his coronation. He didn't see me at first, but when he did, he froze. I was sitting at the head of the table. Linda sat at my right. The corporate logo gleamed behind us. Kyle's eyes darted between me and the others. He turned pale. I smiled. Have a seat, Kyle. Let's get started. He spoke. He fumbled. He denied, deflected, even tried to joke. It didn't matter. I had the evidence. And I had a question gnawing at me the entire time. Why did no one stop him sooner? Why had our system allowed someone like this to thrive? Kyle wasn't the only problem. He was the symptom. And I was beginning to see the disease ran deeper than I'd imagined. For a few seconds after I spoke, the entire boardroom sat in stunned silence. Kyle was still standing frozen in place, like a statue cracking at its core. I watched his throat bob as he swallowed hard, trying to gather himself. Mr. Ward, he finally said, his voice dry and uneven. I didn't expect you'd be part of today's meeting. I didn't expect to be here either, I replied, turning to address the room. But after spending 2 weeks in the Boston South warehouse, I realized we've got more to talk about than quarterly KPIs. Linda pressed a button on the remote. The projector screen came to life. Footage played Kyle standing in cold storage, smirking down at me as I hauled a heavy load. This was recorded on March 14th, I said. I was assigned to cold zone with no rotation for over 3 hours. Kyle approached me and said, I hit play again. Don't throw your back out, Pops. We don't cover retirement home injuries. Gasps rippled through the room. Kyle jumped in fast. That was taken out of context. I was joking. We all joke with the team, keeps the mood light. Linda stepped in. Here's the email chain from one of Kyle's direct reports, Jamie Tran. She documented a consistent pattern of assigning physically demanding shifts to older employees while shielding younger ones. There are 5 more statements like it. Kyle shifted defensive. I didn't force anyone. They're older. They can't handle the load. That's just facts. What was I supposed to do? Let them get hurt? A senior board member turned to him sharply. So you're admitting you base assignments on age, not on performance. That's a direct violation of the Age Discrimination in Employment Act. Are you aware of that? Kyle's face flushed. I didn't mean I'm not finished. I cut in. On March 17th, you planted a sealed bag and unauthorized scanning equipment in my locker. You then submitted a manipulated video to HR, omitting the portion where you directed me to that zone in the first place. Kyle's jaw worked open, but no words came out. You thought Robert Turner was just another disposable old man. Today you're face-to-face with Ethan Ward, CEO of the company you tried to bury. He paled further, lips trembling. I have legal counsel, he mumbled. I won't say anything else without representation. You're right, I nodded. Linda slid a document across the table. Effective immediately, Kyle Ferguson is suspended pending formal investigation. Internal legal and HR will oversee the termination process. He left the room without another word, but his stench lingered. One of the directors looked at me. Ethan, this could blow back. The media investor confidence. I'm aware, I said, but if we care more about optics than truth, we deserve the fallout. I turned to the board. We've always claimed Quinline values equality, but if someone like Kyle can operate unchallenged for years under our watch, then we're lying to ourselves. I looked to Linda. I want 3 initiatives launched immediately: mandatory training on age discrimination, scheduled manager rotation every 18 months, and a direct anonymous reporting line routed to me personally. She nodded. Other board members began to murmur approval. Heads were already nodding. Later that evening, I returned to my office. There was a handwritten note waiting on my desk. No envelope. Thank you for listening. I never thought a CEO would care about people like us. But today you made it clear we don't have to stay silent anymore. Jamie, I sat in silence. For the first time in a long while, I felt like more than just a CEO. I felt accountable. And I started to wonder how many others had seen Kyle's behavior, but said nothing. What does it say about our company if I had to go undercover to uncover the truth? And if I hadn't stepped in, how many more employees would have been pushed out, gaslit, and humiliated? I knew then Kyle wasn't the end. He was the beginning, and what came next was going to change everything. I didn't think I'd hear from Kyle again so soon, but 10 days after his suspension, an anonymous email landed in my inbox. The subject line was short and cryptic. Off the book shipping, Boston South. I opened it. Attached was a scanned freight document, origin Boston South. It was signed approved by KF, but the recipient wasn't in our official client database. I forwarded it to Linda immediately. Do we have an internal audit on this? I asked. In progress, she replied. But if this is legit, Kyle wasn't just abusive, he was cooking the books. 3 days later, I requested full transactional logs for the Boston South branch going back 12 months. The findings: 7 shipments couldn't be verified. 5 of them matched the timeline of internal shipping errors Kyle had previously reported as lost or misrouted. Estimated loss, $120,000. That was enough to trigger legal. Kyle was officially under internal criminal investigation, and I realized he hadn't just gone too far, he'd gone deep. But I wasn't just interested in punishing him anymore. I wanted to make sure no one like him ever rose again. We called a company-wide summit, bringing in representatives from every branch, managers, floor leads, veteran employees alike. For the first time in years, I took the stage not as the CEO with polished slides and quarterly stats, but as the man who had been mocked, pushed around, and humiliated in a warehouse for simply looking too old. I told them everything. No sugarcoating, no filters. The room went quiet. Not because they didn't believe me, but because some of them had lived it too. Then I announced 3 major reforms: a protected employee reporting system, anonymous complaints routed straight to my office, 360-degree management reviews with input from everyone, including warehouse and delivery staff, mandatory leadership training, lead with empathy, starting with every branch manager in the country. I ended the speech with this: I've been CEO for nearly 20 years, but it wasn't until I was sweeping concrete and freezing in cold storage that I finally saw how disconnected we've become. That ends today. No more blind spots. No more silence. That night, Linda called me. It's official, she said. Kyle's terminated. Legal is prepping documents to refer him for potential fraud charges. I thanked her and hung up. But instead of feeling triumphant, I sat there quietly in my office, unsettled. It's a strange kind of hollow, the feeling of finally watching someone fall, not because you struck them, but because they tripped over their own rot. I remembered his face as he left that boardroom, pale, trembling, suddenly very small, and I wondered, where had he learned that kind of cruelty? Had I overlooked warning signs, enabled the system that nurtured him? And if I hadn't gone in, undercover, would any of this have ever come to light? The next morning, a package arrived at my office. No return address. Inside, a USB drive. And a note. If you want the full truth, watch this. Kyle didn't act alone. I held the drive in my hand for a long moment. Whatever this was, it wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about cleansing. And I knew before I hit play, I needed to be ready for whatever truth was coming next. I locked my office door before plugging in the USB. Inside was a single folder labeled For Ethan only. I opened it. 3 video files, each under 2 minutes long. But what they revealed enough to make my chest tighten and my grip tighten on the desk. The first video, Kyle standing inside the warehouse speaking to a man in his late 50s, salt and pepper hair pressed, shirt name tag clearly visible, Dennis Carver, Regional Operations Manager. Kyle leaned in and said, "If I can push 3 of the old guys out by month's end, you'll keep your end of the deal, right?" Dennis chuckled. "I told you, we reward people who clean house efficiently. I don't care how you do it. Just make sure there's no paper trail. If they complain, I never heard of you." The second video, a screen recording of a Zoom meeting, Dennis again talking to a group of branch managers. "We need higher output across the board. Don't hire over 50s unless absolutely necessary. They don't adapt fast. Say it face to face, never put it in writing." Chills ran down my spine. The third video, Jamie had secretly recorded it. A printed internal guide on shift allocation strategies issued by the Eastern Division office. Underlined in red ink was a handwritten note: quietly prioritize those under 40 for critical roles. I sat back in my chair. I couldn't believe it, but I couldn't deny it either. Kyle wasn't the source. He was the byproduct. The rot started higher up, and I, Ethan Ward, CEO, had failed to see it sooner. I called Linda, sent her everything. We assembled an emergency response team that night. Dennis was suspended within 72 hours. 7 other regional leaders were placed under immediate review. Jamie, brave, brilliant, Jamie was formally invited to join our HQ task force as an advisor on workplace fairness. The company felt like it had been cracked open, and finally the sunlight was pouring in. Soon news outlets picked up the story. I appeared on CBS this morning, not with spin, but with honesty. I told America what we were doing, an age equity revolution in corporate America's most invisible workforce. I said I thought I knew this company from my leather chair on the 23rd floor. But it wasn't until I was hauling pallets at 6 a.m. with a sore back and frozen fingers that I saw how deep the cracks ran. We're not patching over them. We're rebuilding from the foundation. 3 months later, I was invited to speak at a career expo in Chicago, representing Quinline's New Age Inclusive Hiring Initiative. Our booth featured banners that read, "Skill has no expiration date." I wore a simple gray blazer, standing beside Jamie and Marcus, 2 people who had every reason to never trust corporate again. And yet here they were. We were speaking with a group of military veterans looking to re-enter the workforce when I saw him. Thinner now, nervous, holding a resume folder. Kyle. He didn't see me at first, but when Marcus leaned in and quietly whispered, "He's here," Kyle turned and locked eyes with me. He stopped in his tracks. I stepped forward, slowly. "Looking for new opportunities, Kyle." He didn't respond. Just clenched his jaw, turned, and walked away. I didn't stop him. I didn't need to. Some lessons. You only learn when you're the one on the outside looking in. 1 week later, I sat before the full board of directors. "We can't stop at cleaning up," I told them. "We need to leave something better behind." I proposed the creation of the Quinline Legacy Fund, an internal initiative dedicated to upskilling employees over 50 with digital certifications, prioritizing internal transfers over layoffs for older workers, creating intergenerational mentorship pipelines. The proposal passed unanimously. A month later, hundreds of older employees received invitations to advanced training programs. No more warnings about underperformance. Just investment. Just belief. I ended one of the longest days of my life by staring at myself in the mirror. Not as a CEO, not as a man who got revenge, but as a 56-year-old human being once called a burden, once told he was obsolete, who chose to walk into the fire and walk back out holding the truth. I turned off the lights, and for the first time in months, I slept without waking.